Hey, Matthew. Sorry, I'm not talking. Hey, Matthew, nod your head if you can hear me. Okay, thank you. Hey, Jason. Oh, he left. Hey, Jason, welcome to our Zoom session. I'm just letting you know that I need to admit you into our Zoom session. Most likely, that's what people are telling me here. Most likely it's because you're not logged in into your MSU Gmail account that linked to that official Zoom account. So I'm just letting you know, use that MSU Zoom account to log in so that I don't have to admit you. Because I'm afraid that like one day you will come to join us and I will not notice you on the screen. So you'll be hanging there for like 5-10 minutes or something. Okay, friends, so it's 2 p.m. on my computer clock right here, and I would like to start this class and hopefully all other classes on time. So welcome back. I'm glad you made it to our second session. I think I see a couple of new faces. Did you guys just join us? We were there last time? Okay, so that's your first time? So what's your name, if you don't mind me asking? Hope, okay, welcome to our class. What about you, sir? Mohammed or Ahmed, okay. Welcome, Ahmed. So this is our second session, but we're still starting out with some of the organizational issues. What we're going to do today, we have the following agenda. First of all, we'll talk about the syllabus once again. Okay, maybe you had a chance to sleep on the information that I revealed to you by going over the syllabus. Maybe you have some additional insights, comments, or suggestions. So you let me know. After that, we'll take the syllabus quiz. Now, that's the dreadful moment. You know, students hate quizzes because sometimes you kind of get lost. You come, to the first class and oh, there's already a quiz, right? So don't worry about it. No need to get stressed out. I'll give you 2 attempts. You can take it in class, and then you can go back, look at the syllabus again, and retake it. And that applies to everybody here. If you miss some questions, you can go back, look at the syllabus again, and retake the quiz. Because again, we're just getting started. It's not a real quiz. It's just like a practice exercise. Okay. So we'll take the syllabus quiz. We'll take the syllabus quiz first. After that, we will start talking about decision support technologies or decision support tools. So we'll get into the subject matter of our class. As I told you before, for the first few lectures or so, it will be mostly theoretical material. We're not going to do much in the lab. But after approximately 2 weeks, we'll start working on hands-on exercises that hopefully put to practice the theoretical concepts that we're discussing here. So today we'll start with the topic of decision support systems. That's one of the modules. It's actually a combined module. It's called decision support systems and business intelligence. So we'll get started with that module as well. And then towards the end of the session, I'll give you maybe 15 minutes to work on individual assignment 1. Again, individual assignment 1 is more for practice activity. It's like a student survey that I'm asking you to fill in. And again, it's for us to practice completing and submitting assignments, because we're going to have 10 assignments in this class, including this one. So again, that's more for practice exercise. No need to get worried or no need to think much about it, right? So, and it's also a student survey where I'm asking you some thoughts on this class and education in general. So I want to get a feeling of what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Maybe I'll change something in this course based on the information that you provide for assignment 1. Okay, and that will be it. That's the entire agenda. Hey friends, I'm sorry for being repetitive. I just noticed that some people require my permission to enter the Zoom room. My settings are set to let everybody in automatically. So your fellow students are telling me that if you're not logged in into your official MSU Gmail account, and that account is linked to your Zoom account, then in that case, you will need to have a permission to enter. So I suggest you log in into your official Zoom account to join our classes. In that case, I won't have to give you permission. I won't have to admit you into my Zoom room. Because otherwise you may get stuck, like I'm talking about something and you're hanging there for like 5-10 minutes without listening to anything. I think that's how it works. You cannot admit it. Okay, so let's start with the first agenda item, if you don't mind, our course syllabus. So here it is once again. And also, I'm talking to you guys in Zoom. If I'm not sharing my screen with you, if I'm talking about something that is not corresponding to my screen or anything else is happening, just let me know, use your voice. Like I almost forgot to share my screen so that I can show you the syllabus again. So you see my syllabus, right? Oh yeah, that's another good point. So I forgot to use the right screen in the physical course. So do you see my syllabus on the screen? Okay, good. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, so any comments or questions about the syllabus? Is there anything that came to your mind after our first introductory class? How about that? I'll ask your feedback on the following item, this attendance procedure. Remember I talked about assigning points for attending classes and deducting points for not attending classes. It's right here. So there's 10% devoted to attendance and participation. So for every class that you attend, you'll get 1 point. Approximately, we'll have 25 classes here during this semester, hopefully. Okay? Hopefully nothing happens like snow or something like that. This grade is out of 20, which means that if you miss 5 classes, you can still get an A, you can still get 100, right? At the same time, I don't want to have like a free attendance mode because I know it's not working well for a lot of people. I want to have some tangible incentive for people to come here to do work and keep abreast with the course, right? I've been an online student myself, and sometimes when I take online courses without strict deadlines, I never complete them, right? I'll do it next month. I'm too busy this week and things like that, right? But again, we all know as adults that there's no such thing as tomorrow. You either do it now or tomorrow you'll have other things to worry about. So that's why I want to encourage people to come to class. I feel a little bit bad about it because during that COVID pandemic, people are struggling with all kinds of things, and maybe I shouldn't require attendance. But at the same time, I've heard this from many instructors that if attendance either in Zoom or face-to-face is not mandatory, that things start becoming ugly towards the end of the semester. And on a broader note, every semester I have somebody failing this course, and it's usually somebody who is just not attending, right? It's not that they don't have what it takes to pass this course. It's just that they drift away slowly and then they never come back, right? So that's why I don't want people to drift away from the agenda and focus on this course. So what do you think? Is it okay? Is it fair? I mean, is it too much? No serious objections? Okay. All right, anything else about the syllabus? Anything else that you would like to discuss, or that's it? Well, if you don't have any comments or questions, you can always, of course, you can always raise questions later on as we proceed through the course. Now, let's do this now. We'll take our syllabus quiz, again, more as a practice, okay? So for that, you need to have, one second. There's something in chat. Okay, Sean said yes. Maybe he's confirming one of the things. Yeah, we'll take our course syllabus quiz. This quiz is right here. To take this quiz, you need to use Responder's lockdown browser. Is there anybody here who doesn't know how to use it? Raise your hand if you don't know how to use it. What about you guys in Zoom? Is there anybody who doesn't know how to use Zoom? How to use lockdown? Looks like everybody knows it.
Isn't lockdown going to kick us out of the Zoom?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't thought about it.
Pretty
okay,
sure
let's do this because I still want to have this proceeding. I mean, normally we're not going to take this those quizzes during class time. I'll give you like time when you want to take it, right? So if you don't want to exit Zoom, then do the following. Just wait until the end of the session, and then take it towards the end when we're already done with the session. Okay? Is it okay? Yeah, it's something I haven't thought about. Using lockdown while people are also watching the session in Zoom. So please do it later, like towards the end of the session. It's really not a big quiz, so you probably need 5 minutes to take it. But you guys in class, can you please go ahead and take it now? Hey, if you have just joined us, we're taking the syllabus quiz in class. Now, since the syllabus quiz has lockdown protection, I'm suggesting you take it after we're done with our Zoom session, because otherwise it will require you to close Zoom. So that's what we're doing in class. You can take a break for 5 minutes. Welcome to the course. You've made it finally. downloaded, it's already installed. Okay, go to start. Search for. Yeah, sometimes the search box is not working. If you take this quiz from your home computer, in case you don't know, it will tell you something like this quiz requires a respond to lockdown browser, and there will be a download link. You cannot just Google that software because it has to be downloaded using that particular link because it's also connected to the license that MSU has. Okay. Is everybody done here in class? Does anybody need more time? Not really, because you're probably just joining us and you haven't read the syllabus. You have 2 attempts, right? Since you came late, just take it after the class, okay? But everybody has 2 attempts. So if you took it now, you can always look at those answers and take it again, okay? So it's more like a practice exercise to make sure everybody understands lockdown browser technology, things like that. And normally, we're not going to take quizzes in class. I will ask you to take it after we're done with a particular session or lecture, okay? So other than a couple of people, we're done, right? Are we done? Hope, are we done? You're done? Okay. Okay, friends, so that was a practice exercise with quizzes. Let's go to the second agenda item, which is decision support systems. I'm responding to chat questions. Yes, Violet, you have 2 attempts for the syllabus quiz, but all other quizzes will have 1 attempt. So right now we're just practicing using lockdown technology. Yeah, I'm sorry if I sent you a wrong email. In Canvas, there's a link that says Zoom link for class sessions. It's different from the Zoom link for office hours. It has 40 at the end. So that's the session that we're using. So sorry if I misled you. I was also a bit worried about that because when I launched my meeting, I only saw like 1 person sitting there. I don't know. I was pretty sure it was the correct link in the announcement. Let me just show you once again. Unless it's something that I'm not aware of. So this is the link that I'm using for all class sessions and lab sessions. Okay, so hopefully let me just copy. Yeah, it's different. I'm sorry, I don't know why. It has to have 40 at the end. I'm not sure what happened. Let me check. You're right. No, it is 48. Yeah, so that seems to be the right link. Maybe you clicked on that office hours link. So, but anyways, it happens. We need to get comfortable with things during the first week. You haven't missed much because I just asked people whether they have any questions or comments about the syllabus. And then we took the syllabus quiz, and you can do it after the class. So I'm glad you found a way to join us still. Okay, friends, so we're moving to the second agenda item, which is decision support technologies, or DSS, or decision support systems. So we'll start with our decision support systems lecture. My presentation slides, my PowerPoint slides are right here. And I would like to remind you that all of my lectures, they are pre-recorded and posted to YouTube. Okay? Now, of course, there's always like a slight difference between what I'm saying in class and what's recorded there, right? But usually there's 80, I would say at least 85% overlap between what we're covering in class and what those videos contain. And obviously, those videos are a bit more focused because I don't digress that much as I do in class, because in class sometimes, we ask questions, we discuss things. So you can always use those videos to review. So this is what I'm talking about here. So if you click on this link, you'll go to YouTube, and it's actually a playlist from my channel. And here's the lecture recorded based on those PowerPoint slides, okay? Also, I would like to remind you, in case you didn't see my announcement, I have another playlist where I'm uploading my Zoom recordings, right? I'm not sure how useful it is. How many of you actually watch those Zoom recordings? So some people watch, okay. Well, anyways, it's not that difficult for me to do it. So after every class, maybe like after 1 hour, I upload it to YouTube as well. So it should be available within a couple of hours on YouTube. So the link is different one. It says live Zoom lectures playlist on YouTube. So that's where I'm uploading my recordings of Zoom sessions, right? So it's a different playlist. It's not like that playlist with pre-recorded lectures. Okay, friends, so we're starting our decision support systems module, and this is also a very brief conceptual introduction into the subject matter of this course. The kind of overreaching question we are trying to answer today with today's lecture is, why do we need decision support tools or decision support technologies? As you remember, this class is called what? What's the title of this course? You remember? Yeah, decision support technologies. I also call it sometimes decision support tools, right? So the question is, why do we need decision support tools or decision support technologies? Any ideas? You guys joining us in Zoom, you can also participate. If you have something to say, you don't have to raise your hand. You can just use your voice, because sometimes I don't pay attention to chat on a timely basis. So why do we need decision support tools or technologies? Just give me any explanation. Okay, well, I mean, that's a good answer, but it's a bit generic, right? I mean, you're kind of saying, well, we need it because we need it, right? We need it because they help us, right? But in what specific ways they help us? What do you think? Okay, so that's one functionality of decision support tools. They help us work with data that we're using in decision making. But my next question to you, why do we need help with data? Like, why don't we gather data ourselves as humans? Why do we need computers or tools to help us with that? Yeah, there's so much data, right? So we need some assistance, right? Anything else? Any other ideas as to why we need computers? Besides that, we cannot handle those massive amounts of data. To make less errors, right? So to make less errors, because computers, at least in, not all the time, right? But at least in some scenarios, they're more precise, right? For example, computers do not make calculation mistakes, right? I actually remember when I was in school, there were like some kids saying, oh, my calculator is wrong or something like that. I don't think it was ever true, because calculators never make calculation mistakes. I know, because I was a computer engineering student, I know that one of the difficulties that hardware designers had is that those floating point numbers, because those numbers were never represented precisely. And there was like a very slight chance that due to rounding, you'll get some kind of calculation error, right? Very small chance. I've never seen personally a computer or calculator making a calculation error, right? So computers are better than us, at least in some way, right? So that's why we need tools. We need computerized tools for making decisions. Well, look, let me remove this. Collectively, it comes down to this. There's this concept of bounded rationality. And the concept of bounded rationality was created or popularized by Herbert Simon, a well-known American economist who won a Nobel Prize in economics back in 1978. He also won the so-called Turing Award in 1975. And if you're in computer science, you probably know what it is, right? Harrison, what is Turing Award? Well, Turing, its last name, he was that guy who designed that first computer architecture, the so-called Turing machine, right? So this prize was named after him. It's giving out annually to the most accomplished computer scientist in the world, right? So it's the Nobel Prize equivalent in computer science. Okay? Alfred Nobel, the guy who donated his money, he was actually an inventor who invented dynamite, right? And he became rich because of that. So he devoted his money to prizes and to recognize certain scientists. But at that time, we're talking about maybe more than 100 years ago, computer science was not on the table, right? Another science that doesn't get Nobel Prize recognition is math. There are rumors that it was something related to his personal hatred for mathematician because of his romantic situation with his wife, something like that. I'm not going to give too many details, but basically, there is a rumor that he had this personal hatred towards mathematician, but who knows what was the real situation, why he did not recognize mathematicians. So in mathematics, there's Fields medal, like equivalent to Nobel Prize. And in computer science, it's Turing medal. But again, it tells you that Herbert Simon was accomplished not just economics. He is also known as a political scientist, as a cognitive psychologist. So he was active across many fields, but he was widely known as an economist, actually. Okay. So he received a Nobel Prize largely for his concept of bounded rationality. Okay. Look, at a very superficial level, this is what bounded rationality means. Humans are not very rational. They're not very smart. Okay, maybe smart is not the right term. Not very rational. Okay? You may be thinking, well, I mean, isn't it obvious that humans are not completely rational? I mean, how do you get a Nobel Prize for something that is trivial? I mean, do you agree with that statement that humans are not rational sometimes, right? Do you agree with that statement? Seems to be trivial, but at that time, a lot of economists, or most economists, whenever they came up with any kind of theory, like utility theory or anything related to human decision making, they made this assumption that humans are rational, right? Rational in a sense, they prefer more utility to less, more value to less value, right? Something along the lines, if I ask you, okay, you have two options. I will give you 1 gallon of milk for free or 2 gallons of milk for free. Which one would you choose? So economists would always base their theories on the assumption that most people would choose 2 gallons of milk for free, right? Because more value, more utility is better than less utility. But we know that in real life, it doesn't work that way all the time. Some people will say, oh, I'll just take 1 gallon of milk because I don't want to carry 2 gallons of milk, something like that, right? So they may have like a different take on things, okay? So that was a big paradigm shift in economics, not assuming that humans are rational and creating models that take into account the fact that humans are sometimes irrational, sometimes emotional, sometimes they make things that are crazy, that don't make any sense, don't make any rational sense, okay? That reminds me of a couple of situations that I faced, speaking about people making rational decisions, or not necessarily absolutely rational decisions. I once taught an MBA class back at Abu Dhabi University, and my students were like accomplished professionals, like in their 30s, they were sitting in class. And we're analyzing a case study, right? To make it very simple, when you look at the numbers in that case study, it's clear that one sales manager is underperforming, okay? So there are those regional sales managers working for a distribution company, and one sales manager is underperforming. So I ask my students, so what do we need to do? And most students are saying, we need to fire that sales manager, something like that. We need to deal with him. We need to punish that sales manager, okay? Now, one student in class says, you know what I would do? I would actually increase salary of that sales manager who's underperforming. So everybody was like, why? Like, I was shocked, like, at that kind of take on things. Why? And he said, well, maybe he's struggling financially. Maybe his wife is nagging him for not bringing enough money home. If we increase his salary, he'll be too ashamed of not showing his best performance, right? So that was his logic, okay? Now, what do you think about it? Is it crazy, irrational, what? Increasing salary of an underperforming employee. Is it a rational decision or irrational? What would you say? Okay. Well, go ahead here. Okay. Okay, so I mean, at the minimum, we can say it's a different way of thinking, right? It's not like how most people think, right? And my first reaction, like what Jessica said, was like, well, it's not very rational, right? It doesn't make any sense. But shortly after that, I had the same kind of approach being applied to me. There was a Starbucks store in my building, and whenever I go there, they never have brewed coffee, right? So whenever I go there, I said, I would like brewed coffee, and they keep telling me, we don't have brewed coffee, and kind of telling me like, go away. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have brewed coffee? You're Starbucks, aren't you selling coffee? They're saying, yeah, but we don't want to make brewed coffee because you're the only one buying it here. We don't want to brew a pot, and then it will be wait, And every day I'm fighting with them, and eventually I was like, guys, it's crazy. I'm coming here to buy coffee, and every time you're giving me a hard time with this coffee. I mean, I'm not asking you for a favor, right? Because I'm paying you money. You're a coffee shop. I mean, if I went to CVS asking them for coffee, I would understand if they were like angry about it, right? So I was kind of, I wasn't that angry because at that time I already gave up. I was kind of making fun of them, mocking them, saying, look, guys, you need to beg for coffee from Starbucks. And then the owner of the Starbucks shop, he was somewhere at the back working on things, and he heard me complaining, and he came to me and he said, oh, I've heard about all of your hardships with our store. I'm very upset that you're not getting your coffee. How about this? You take anything that you want for free today. Just take anything like pastries, desserts. Take anything that you want for free. It's all in the house, right? And then it kind of changed, from being angry and having a very low opinion. For some reason, like my opinion just shifted, and I started thinking, well, maybe it's not such a bad shop. I mean, maybe I was too impatient with them. Maybe they do have this rationale for not selling coffee. So basically, I said that, well, you know what? Let's do this. I will pay for it, but we'll give this money like as a tip to your employees, like for all those things that we argued about and things like that. So we did something like that, and we left on good terms, right? So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes unconventional approach, like to dealing with things, kind of works, right? So, but yeah, at the minimum, we can say that some people think differently, right? Their approach is not completely rational. Okay. Another example that comes to my mind is my uncle. I always puzzled by him. He seems to be a very intelligent person, and he's a businessman. And sometimes for minor things, he keeps analyzing, like calculating things in Excel. But when he's making a big decision, he's contacting an astrologist. So there's an astrologist that he works with, and this astrologist gives him some advice, right? To me, it doesn't make sense, like to be so rational in minor things, so calculating and rational in minor things, and so irrational, relying on the movement of stars and something that most people call pseudoscience when it comes to making big decisions, right? Well, anyways, humans are not completely rational. Their rationality is bounded, and that's why we need assistance of computers sometimes. Now, Herbert Simon, he gave birth to this flourishing research on human cognition, okay? And this research, I find this research fascinating because it answers a very interesting question. Why do smart people do dumb things? Okay, to me, it's a very fascinating subject. Okay, and it's also an interesting subject because it gives us all hope. You see, it's my opinion. Maybe you view things differently. In life, it all comes down to common sense ideas, really. In order to be successful in life or in a particular profession, you don't need to have a very high IQ like Einstein. Right? You just need to be intelligent enough about basic things, right? So that's the hope for us. Sometimes very smart people actually do dumb things. In other words, sometimes being too smart plays against you, right? So what I've noticed like about smart people is that sometimes they have cognitive biases related to high IQ. So in a way, they're not any better than somebody who has a low IQ, right? Because they also have their own cognitive biases, okay? For example, one thing that I've noticed about smart people, sometimes they're imagining too many things. Their brain works so fast, it's so powerful. They're imagining all kinds of scenarios, all kinds of hardships and things that can go wrong, right? And then they never get anything done because they keep thinking and worrying and dreaming about things, right? Versus a person who is dumb to the extent where they don't understand all the difficulties, all the risk, and they just start doing it, right? And because they start doing it, they accomplish something, right? So that's why I find cognitive bias is a fascinating subject, because it says that being smart, being successful is not just having high IQ. It's about being disciplined, having a certain sobriety of character, okay? So next we'll talk about specific cognitive biases that came from that whole concept or paradigm shift of bounded rationality. So people started researching it more, how exactly humans are bounded, what are the typical biases and things like that. So we'll talk about those common biases. And if you have like examples of those common biases, or if you've learned something about your own biases, you can share it with us towards the end of this lecture. Now, I've been using this example, but not anymore, to show you just like what we mean by cognitive biases, where we don't see things as they are. But I guess this example is becoming old. It's been on the internet for like 20, 30 years. So everybody knows about it. So when you look at line A or line B, which one is longer? What would you say? Well, it looks, I mean, it really looks like line A is longer, right? But they're equal, actually. If you want to measure it, you can measure it. You'll see they're exactly the same. Okay? By the way, I once had an experiment in my doctoral class. When I asked people this question, I mean, I think most people knew the answer. They said, well, they're the same. And then one student stepped out of the classroom, and then I told them, let's do this. When he comes back, I will ask you this question, and you will all tell me that line B is longer, right? So I asked them the same question. Everybody says line B is longer. So I asked this guy, which line is longer? He says line B, right? Which gives us an example of another cognitive bias, group thing. It's hard to go against the group, right? It's very stressful to go against the group. So what did you want to say? Why is that? Because of errors? Well, it's a outside of the box thinking. Yeah, some people think in it from a different angle. Now, what about this? Are those lines parallel to each other or not? Those gray lines. Well, you can probably deduct like my logic, right? Well, they are parallel. They don't look like they're parallel to each other. They look they're crooked, but they are parallel, right? So that's another example for visual bias. Now, this is another demonstration. You see this rectangle, it's actually gray. It has like uniform gray color, but when you put a gradient on the background, it looks like it's a gradient as well. But this side is darker, right? So this is like a small example of visual biases that we have. We don't see things exactly the way they are sometimes, right? Okay, now let's talk about commonly manifested, commonly detected biases in decision making. The first bias is interesting. I think all of us can relate to this bias because of the recent elections and the political situation. Wishful thinking. So wishful thinking means the formation of beliefs and the making of decisions according to what is pleasing to imagine instead of by appeal to evidence rationality. Okay? So wishful thinking means we believe what we like to believe in. And it's not based on anything but the fact that this belief makes us feel good. Okay? Let me give you an example of that. I mean, you've probably been exposed to that recent political race and all those things. You know, what I've noticed about people is that I'll say most people fall into that category who have that bias. They have certain feeling about things. Like, for example, they don't like Donald Trump, right? And no matter what you say, no matter what kind of evidence you give them, they will still not like him, right? They will reject every piece of evidence. They will still say he's bad, you know, and things like that. And then, you know, the other party is also the same thing, right? There are some people who like Donald Trump, and no matter how much evidence you provide to them saying that, you know, he's bad for economy or something like that, they will not accept it, right? So we believe in things because we like to believe in them, right? Not because there's evidence for that, okay? There's another tragic example that you see all the time. You know, sometimes a person gets arrested for a murder, right, for some kind of very brutal crime. And sometimes they talk to this person's mother or parents, and the mother would always say, I do not believe this. My son could never do anything like that, something like that, right? So no matter how much evidence you give to this mother that her son is a cold-blooded murderer, she will never believe in that. She doesn't believe in that kind of evidence because believing that evidence hurts her feelings, right? So that's wishful thinking. We believe what makes us feel good, right? So any examples of wishful thinking in daily life, like where you see people who just delusioning themselves because it hurts them to accept facts about, you know, about reality? What about sports?
So like if there's if there's a call that could really go either way, if you're a fan of one team,
okay. Okay, because believing in their team makes them feel good, right? That's what being a fan is all about. So they believe in their team regardless what the evidence is. So that's one example. The other example is called forward bias, also a very interesting one. Forward bias means the tendency, sorry, I'll adjust it here. Forward bias means the tendency to create models based on past data, which are validated only against the past data. Sorry, let me do one. So this is what it means. Think about it. When you do any kind of statistical analysis, when you do any kind of analysis, you're always doing analysis of the past, not of the future, right? Unfortunately, what happened in the past is not a guarantee that the same thing will happen in the future, okay? For example, people say something like that, oh, San Francisco survived 3 earthquakes or 3 fires, it will survive another one, right? Just because San Francisco as a city successfully came out from those crises 3 times does not mean that, that the city will come out successful from another earthquake or another fire. You see what I'm saying? Because look, think about it, past does not have hands extending into the future. So past does not guarantee the future, okay? One example that is found in the book of Nassim Taleb, to me Nassim Taleb is the greatest philosopher of science who deals with the topic of cognitive biases and people's misinterpretation of probability and statistics. He talks about the so-called Thanksgiving turkey, right? So a farmer buys a turkey to eat this turkey during Thanksgiving. So for 100 days, every day, the owner, the farmer comes into the barn and gives food to the turkey, right? Now, this turkey is a bit of a scientist and statistician. After observing the farmer coming in 199 times and giving him food, he makes a conclusion that based on past data, the owner is a very good person because he feeds me every day. Now, on the 100th day, the owner comes in with a knife and kills the turkey, right? Because that turkey was meant to be for dinner, right? So you see what it illustrates? You have 99 observations from the past. Those 99 observations do not really tell you what's going to happen in the future, right? So the owner, the farmer, turned out to be a bad person for the turkey. But the turkey, based on the sample, thought that that was a good person. Okay? Now, forward bias is frequently manifested in all kinds of financial models. And to me, sometimes it's amazing how people believe in those models. They will say something like, oh, based on past performance, the sales price of Apple stock will be, I don't know, 317, and they will give you a cent precision, $59. They'll give you something like that. Or they will say something like, 30 years from now, the United States will have demand for 100,000 data scientists, something like that. Look, who knows what will happen 30 years from now? Maybe, God forbid, comet will hit Earth and we will all cease to exist as a civilization, right? So whatever you think about, whatever data you have about the past is not guarantee of the future, okay? Now, do you have any other examples of forward bias that you see in daily life, maybe in a business context or sports context? Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
People will collect data from teams season,
Mm-hmm.
and they have an indeterminate you can tell Brad can maybe win money
Mm-hmm.
depending on how accurate your bracket is.
Mm-hmm.
And so people use data from the season to predict, what's going to happen. And a lot of times people will be like, oh, this is definitely going to happen, and something kind of completely unexpected.
Exactly, right? So sometimes it works, but it doesn't, and we don't even know like how good that thing is, right? Maybe it doesn't work 60% of the time. Maybe flipping a coin is a better mechanism of making those decisions than analyzing data, right? Okay, good example. Oh, sometimes people think about athletes, like for example, a boxer won 20 matches, right? So now he's having his 21st match, and everybody thinks, well, there's no way he's going to lose because he won 20 matches. Well, it doesn't mean anything, right? That reminds me of Mike Tyson losing to, his last name was Kirk Douglas, I think that was his name, in Tokyo. Nobody expected it, but that happened, right? Now, something related to that is called gambler's fallacy, right? It's also related to that forward bias in the sense that you're projecting past data on the future, but it's more focused on probabilities. If you took any course on statistics on probability theory, usually they use this example in their preface or intro chapter to explain how people are not well equipped to think well about probabilities. Gambler's fallacy means you think that past events impact probabilities of future events, okay? How many of you have been to Las Vegas, by the way? You've been to Las Vegas. You know, Las Vegas has that main strip. It's called what? Sunset Strip? I forgot the name of it. Sunset Boulevard? Well, anyway, I forgot that, but it's like that strip where all the casinos are located. And then there are like those other streets behind that main street. And if you go there in the morning, you will see a lot of pawn shops. And there are those poor gamblers who played all night. They're trying to pawn their last Rolex or their last piece of jewelry to get their money back from the casino. This is how they think. They think, look, I've been playing all night and I've had bad luck. Luck was not on my side. I need to play one more time to win my money back because there's no way I can lose this time, right? After all this bad luck, I should have good luck, right? So that's the gambler's fallacy, right? What's the flaw? What's the bias in that thinking? That bad luck will bring you good luck. Say it again, please. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't understand this. So my explanation of the thing is that they lost. I mean, they lost like 10 times, let's say, or 100 times playing all night. Now they think there is no way I'm gonna lose on the 101st attempt. I'm gonna win, right? So that's their reason. So what do you think is the flaw in that kind of argument? What's their fallacy? Yeah, the probability of winning or losing does not change. It doesn't matter how many times you play, right? The probability of winning or losing is always the same. And by the way, it's not in your favor. All casinos are set up in a way where you lose money, right? So that's how this industry works. And you would imagine, right? You would imagine that smart people, people who understand probability. I'm not saying smart. Smart is like too vague of a term. They would not play casinos. But I know so many people who have PhDs, doctoral degrees in statistics, and they like to gamble in Las Vegas, right? I mean, you would imagine that if you have a PhD in statistics from Berkeley, that's my advisor, right? He's an interesting guy, very smart, has a degree in statistics, but he likes to gamble. He likes to play cards. Somehow he thinks that he's smarter than casino, and he's probably losing a lot of money, right? So to me, I mean, at first it was kind of beyond my understanding. Why do you gamble if you understand that the odds are not in your favor? But then I realized it's not about rational thinking, speaking about bounded rationality, right? It's more about emotions. Maybe it gives him a thrill to go to Las Vegas and hope for a win, lose money, right? That's what he's doing, right? So he's switching off that rational side of his brain to gamble, right? So he's playing with that emotional side of his brain. By the way, Nassim Taleb has another example. Probabilities, they're artificial sometimes. They're based on those artificial experiments within a lab setting. Nassim Taleb uses this example of two fictional characters. Nero, a guy who is poor, who has a PhD in statistics from a well-known university, and Fat Tony, his cousin, who doesn't have a high school diploma. He's an Italian-American from New York City who's extremely wealthy because he made a lot of money in those shady real estate dealings in Manhattan, right? So he kind of, juxtaposes their thinking all the time in his novels and his books. So Nero asks Fat Tony the following question. You toss a coin 100 times and you get 100 tails, right? If I toss it one more time, what's the probability of getting a tail? So how would you answer that question? I toss a coin 100 times and I get 100 tails, which is very unusual, right? I toss it one more time, what's the probability of getting a tail? Okay, so a statistician would say 50-50. Now Fat Tony says, no, the probability of getting a tail is 100%, right? So Nero says, why? I mean, it's always 50%. You have two sides, so one side will play, so it's 50%. He said, look, I don't care about your scientific crap. If this coin keeps falling and showing tails, somebody rigged that coin, right? This coin is rigged, right? I don't believe in statistics. I believe what I see with my eyes, right? So casinos, sometimes they fall into this fallacy. They have brilliant statisticians working for them, like all those odds are calculated and well managed, but they cannot manage everything. For example, in one casino, one guy lost everything playing there all night, and he came back with a bomb and he blew up the entire thing, right? So that's something they could not calculate in their model. Somebody getting angry and blowing them up, like a terrorist activity, right? Or those financial institutions that were hurt during September 11th, right? I mean, some of them were actually focused on risk. That's their job, to calculate risk, but they could never imagine that an airplane will crash in their office and destroy their business like that, right? By the way, Nassim Taleb, he worked for some hedge funds in New York, and he said that their risk manager, he calls him a Frenchman from New York, he liked to brainstorm about risk outside of the box, not just in terms of financial risk, right? And he said during one of those brainstorming sessions back in 1980s, they actually talked about the possibility of a plane crashing into their office and destroying their records and assets, right? So he actually thought about it. Because, you know, there are a lot of planes flying over Manhattan and things like that. So gambler's fallacy, thinking that past events impact future probabilities. Disregard of regression towards the mean. Now, this has a lot of sports implications. You know, a lot of sports fans do not understand that. There are many alternative names for this bias. Sometimes they call it the Sports Illustrated cover jinx. What people have noticed that if you have an athlete appearing on the cover of Sports Illustrated, his or her performance tends to decline after that. So they call it Sports Cover Illustrated jinx. So what do you think? How does it work? Why athletes decline in their performance after appearing on Sports Illustrated covers? Is it because it brings them bad luck or something else? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing, right? They don't have anywhere, you know, they're at the peak. They don't have anywhere to go, and that kind of brings us to the explanation of that phenomena. You know, a very simple way to explain is that things tend to be normal. Things tend to be average by definition, right? Things are rarely exceptional by definition. Okay. By the way, the reason it's called regression towards the mean, the person who discovered that phenomena, he was actually the same person who discovered regression analysis, and he was analyzing how height of parents impacts height of their children. It was before the field of genetics, right? And he discovered one interesting thing. Kids tend to be normal. For example, if you have extremely tall parents, then their child is likely to be not as tall, to be like closer to the average height. If you have extremely short parents, then their child is likely to be a bit taller than parents. Because children, they tend to be normal height by definition, right? So that's why it's called regression towards the mean. Kids tend to be average, right? Contrary to what some people think. Stereotyping, right? Stereotyping, thinking in terms of categories without paying attention to facts, right? So we all know what it is. For example, my advisor, my dissertation advisor, who is a very top scientist, he's very tall. His height is 6'10", okay? So when people see him, he assumes that he's a former basketball player. So they ask him questions like which team he played for and things like that. Well, he never played basketball. He's not very athletic at all, right? So when we see somebody tall, that stereotype that, oh, that must be somebody related to basketball, right? You know, also parents, if their child is very strong, like very physically fit, they also think that, oh, maybe this our kid should be playing football or something like that. Well, maybe not, right? I mean, let's not stereotype that all athletic fit people are only good for food. Maybe he's actually good in science, right? In fact, I think in science you need to have good physical health as well, right? Because it's all connected to intellectual activity as well. So we stereotype things. Now, I wouldn't say it's a completely dumb way of thinking, right? But it has a lot of pitfalls, and we're familiar with those pitfalls, right? For example, if you're walking at night on a dark alley and you see somebody approaching you, right? You run away, because you don't want to start like over-analyzing. Oh, what if this person is a good person, right? You see somebody approaching you and you say, well, I don't want to take my chances, right? Meeting somebody on a dark alley is not, can turn out ugly, right? Something like that. So those stereotypes, they're shortcuts. And those shortcuts, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work because they're not true, right? Any other examples of stereotyping? I mean, more subtle than racism. Like, we've heard about it, like we all know those examples. But what are like some subtle examples of stereotyping that you see in your work life or in your daily life? Where people take those shortcuts, they don't think too much. They say, oh, if this, then that. Right. Maybe like the age life based on where you're from. Okay. Like generally, people think that people from the south are less intelligent than people from the north. Okay, well, they think that Asian kids are good at math or something like that, right? For me, like when people hear my Eastern European accent, they ask about vodka. If I drink vodka, how much vodka I drink, and things like that, right? Well, I don't drink vodka. I don't like the taste. It's too strong for me. I like beer and wine and things like that. But they always, spend time talking about it, right? Well, I think one bias that kind of comes to my mind is like that educational background. People make assumption that if somebody has a degree from Harvard or something like that, that this person can do no wrong. Well, it's not always the case, right? In fact, there are plenty of successful people who don't have a degree from Harvard, who are extremely intelligent, extremely successful, and it just doesn't work that way, right? Okay, well-traveled road effect, another cognitive bias. It means that we are puzzled and we are burdened by unfamiliar things, and we feel light, we feel positive about familiar things. Okay, for example, let's say you're traveling from, you're commuting daily from home to office using a particular route, and let's say it takes you 15 minutes to commute. Okay, and let's say somebody suggested a different route, suggesting that this route is actually short. It will help you to get to work faster. What's going to happen to a lot of people, they'll take this new route, but because this new route is not familiar, they'll be stressed out about it. And they'll be like, no, I'm not going to take this route anymore. It took me 1 hour to get there. Well, in reality, it could be not 1 hour, but 14 minutes. But because you were so stressed out by the fact that you're not familiar by that route, you will overestimate the time that it takes. Okay. So we're scared, we're negative towards unfamiliar things, right? And like my example, you see it at work all the time. When somebody offering something new to try, people are like, no, it's not gonna work, it's too difficult, it's impossible, right? Because they do not like things that are unfamiliar. It makes them feel uncomfortable, right? Any other examples of well-traveled road effect where people are negative towards unfamiliar? Go ahead. Yeah, you feel like a bit cautious and scared of it, and you're not sure whether you want to try it or not. Yeah, so food is another example. Illusory superiority or illusion of superiority. People tend to overestimate one's desirable qualities and underestimate undesirable qualities relative to other people. You always hear it, right? You hear somebody talking about his work or her work, they always say, I'm the only smart guy there. I'm doing the right thing. Everybody's lazy. Everybody's stupid. It's only me who knows how to do things, right? Well, that's not true. It's hard to believe in that, right? Because you don't see like all those things that other people are doing, and because of that, you don't fully understand, whether they're doing the right thing or not the right thing, right? So when it comes to us, we always overestimate our contribution, our abilities, and underestimate talents and contributions of other people. Another cognitive bias, rosy retrospection, the tendency to look at things more favorably that happened in the past. Okay, I'm sure you can relate this to your grandparents or maybe great-grandparents. I always think about my great-grandma. She was a wonderful lady. She lived until 102, I believe. And I remember she would always scold my other cousins, especially female cousins. She would say, well, during my youth, girls were so much better. They were better mannered. They wore better clothing and things like that. So she was always upset about the new generation, right? They always think that in the past things were better. Well, do you really think that past is better than future? What do you think? I mean, how do you see things? Go ahead. Well, yeah, it depends what we're talking about. If you're talking about medicine, then definitely, past was not better than today, right? I've read that in ancient Rome, the average life expectancy was around 30 years due to diseases, wars, and things like that. So in ancient Rome, if you were 27 years old, you're already old man pushing your luck, right? You're already approaching your life expectancy, okay? Well, nowadays, 27 years old, it's like a toddler, right? Person is only starting out, right? So medicine is better, right? Technology is better for sure, right? What else is better? Well, what are the things that are worse nowadays compared to the past? Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Although I have a counter argument to that. People are saying that in the past they just didn't pay so much attention to mental issues, right? They were just ignoring those things. Like if somebody has ADHD, they would say, "Oh, he's just like a very active child" or something like that, right? But you may be right. I'm not sure. Yeah,
No, I agree. I totally agree that we were more ignorant to what was actually going on in the past. It may not have been changed, but we're focusing on it so much more now that
Okay.
it seems to be a big bridge.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know. Maybe you're right, because I do believe that all those gadgets, they're not healthy. They're rewiring our brains. People are becoming less social, right? They spend more time on the social media playing video games. That makes them a bit, that loses their ability to connect to people in real life. And that's already like a mental problem, right? One thing that I definitely notice about myself, I think I have developed with like all those social media, I developed a degree of ADHD. I don't think I ever had it when I was a kid. but I find it very difficult to concentrate on things nowadays, right? In the past, I could just sit and read one book in one evening. Now I read like 1 or 2 pages. I need to get distracted and check my Facebook or something like that, right? I think most people are like that now, right? So that's a form of mental deviation that was imposed on us by technology. You know, I started, I guess I'm getting old. I started getting those things. You know, like what bothers me? I remember when I was a student, I could get a can of Coca-Cola for 25 cents from a machine, right? And I remember like for 50 cents, I could get that bottle. I forgot how many ounces it is. Nowadays, that bottle is how much? Is it $1.75? And you know, that bothers me. I'm like, there's no way I'm paying $1.75 for a Coke. It bothers me. But you understand what the problem is, right? $1.75 now is probably even less than 50 cents in the past. But it bothers me, right? Because I believe that, wow, that's too high, okay? By the way, I dig out some old newspapers. It looks like Coke was more like 5, 10 cents, like, you know, if you're talking about 30, 40 years ago. And you know what really struck me? I may be wrong about dates, but I think I was looking at classified section of a newspaper from 1970s, and I was surprised that you could buy a new car for like $2,000, $3,000. It was something like that was the price, right? Nowadays, a new car is like $30,000. So I would imagine the person who bought a new car 30 years ago, they're like, what? $30,000 for a car? You're crazy. That's the price of a house in Chicago, right? Well, there are no houses for $30,000 in Chicago either anymore. It's more $300,000. Yeah, and that I already discussed the second one, right? That's related to rosy retrospective, thinking about money based on past prices. Now, the thing about money, you know, people think about face value of money, meaning the amount, rather than the purchasing power of that money. The purchasing power of money changes all the time, and that's largely due to what? Inflation, right? Inflation happens for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons for inflation is that government keeps printing money, right? So this is what happens. There's certain, like imagine like two clouds. On the left, you have all products and services available in the United States, right? On the right, you have all dollars that people have in their accounts and their pockets and things like that, right? So somehow the prices are in equilibrium. Those dollars can buy certain goods and services, right? Now imagine if somebody comes in and you know, by the way, we're now dealing with this. Remember when Trump, you know, when Trump gave, I think it was like what, $600 per person, that relief. There was this debate whether to give $2,000 per person or something like that, right? So I'm not following that monetary policy that much. So I may be wrong about some. I'm just speculating, right? I'm imagining that this money is not real in a sense that the government is just printing that money and saying, okay, now because they have this right to print money, they say, oh, now you have $2,000 extra, right? So what happens when that cloud of money grows while the amount of products, the number of products available, the services available stay the same? What's going to happen to prices? The prices go up, right? Because there's more money, we can buy more, but the number of goods is the same. So there's more money chasing after those goods and services, so prices go up, okay? By the way, if you want to get a sense of it, look at the gold prices. Look at the gold. The kind of gold prices stay more or less stable relative to the value of money. I think, approximately, I think 10 years ago, the price of an ounce of gold was like $400. Now it's approaching 2,000 or something like that. So that gives you like an idea of inflation, how much value the dollar has lost. Okay. So free money is not necessarily a good thing because of inflation, right? I mean, it sounds like a good thing, but the intention is to stimulate the economy, right? To give people more money to spend. You know, once you spend money, businesses get that money. So it works. I mean, it works in the sense that it stimulates the economy, but the downside is inflation. Planning fallacy, the tendency to underestimate task completion times. I can relate to that, especially this happens for intellectual tasks, right? I tend to underestimate how long it will take me to do certain intellectual tasks. It's easy to estimate things involving physical tasks. For example, laying bricks, right? So you're laying bricks, let's say you lay, I don't know, 100 bricks per hour. If somebody asks you how long it will take you to lay 500 bricks, you will say, I don't know, 5 hours, okay? But what I've noticed about myself, I overestimate my abilities by a factor of 3. For example, if I'm planning to read 3 books over the weekend, I'm lucky to read 1, right? So that's the kind of overestimation. I'm overestimating my abilities. I'm sure as a student, you can relate to that as well, right? Sometimes you think it will take me 1 weekend to work on this project, this assignment. Then the next thing you know, 1 month is over and you haven't even started yet, right? So we tend to underestimate the completion times and overestimate our abilities in relation to certain tasks, especially those intangible intellectual tasks. Okay, at the end, we'll talk about two biases. One, that are very much related to the subject matter of this course, to decision support systems, business intelligence, and things like that. Information bias, the tendency to seek information even when it cannot affect action. Okay. Look, sometimes, no matter how much information you have, you're not in a position to make a better decision, right? Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors of all time, the person who I believe has that common sense that I'm always learning from, he used to say that people who are losing the most in the stock market are of two categories. One category is people who knew nothing about the stock market. They lose all of their savings in the stock market. And the second category are people who thought, how would you continue that? So one category are people who knew nothing. And then the second category who lose all of their money in the stock market are people who thought, what? What would be a guess? Yeah, who thought they knew everything about the stock market, right? So sometimes having a lot of knowledge is not necessarily a good thing, right? That reminds me of my physics professor. He told us this story. He was an expert in mechanics, and his older brother never went to college. He was working as a construction site supervisor. So he told us that one day one of their cranes fell down. Something happened. So he asked. So his brother went to this physics professor and said, "Look, how do we lift that crane? What kind of force we need to apply? Where to lift it up?" And he said he started doing calculations. And after 2 weeks, he gave him calculations saying, "Here you go. This is how you need to apply force to lift that crane up." And he said, "Well, you know what? We don't need it anymore. We already lifted the crane." So how? He said, "Well, just by trying different possibilities, we lifted it up, right?" So sometimes doing things, trying things is more important than gathering information, at least with respect to action. An illusion of control, like we overestimate our ability and ability of others to control certain events. Okay. For example, one thing, I mean, just like everybody else, I could not help but follow the politics for the last few years, although I try to stay away from it. I believe it's like mental noise that doesn't concern me. I need to stay away from it, right? One thing that I realized is that president, at least in the United States, does not have much power, right? Most of the power lies with the Senate and the Congress, right? But some people believe that the president can change things. For example, when economy was booming during Clinton era, that's a fact, it was booming. Everybody would say, "Oh, Clinton was a great president. The economy was booming." Well, is it really Clinton who made the economy boom? I don't think so, right? Clinton was the president during that technology boom when all those technology software companies, dot-com companies were developing. I don't think you can give him credit for that, right? The same thing about Donald Trump. I mean, the stock market was growing. I mean, I don't know, but you cannot just say that it's Donald Trump who grew that stock market so much, right? A president can do so much, right? Maybe some of the tax policies that he had contributed to the growth a little bit, but I don't think it was Donald Trump behind all that growth. We overestimate our ability or ability of other people to control events, right? Some events are beyond control of anybody, no matter how powerful it is. Another thing that I see in the mass media, they're saying that Putin is behind everything. I mean, if you listen to the mass media, it says that Putin is responsible for every cyber attack. And again, no matter how powerful Putin is, he cannot be responsible for it. There's so many things that he cannot do, right? But people think that way, oh, this person can do everything, right? I can do this, or somebody can do this. There's so much we can do, right? Even the most powerful dictator cannot control people completely. And we all see like those examples, right? So you dictate things for a while and then things become out of control and you lose your power, right? So was there a situation in your life or in your work when you thought you have complete control, but then you realize you have zero control? Where you overestimated your ability to control things? Was there a situation like that? Well, I don't have a good example. It happens like sometimes with me and my students, like no matter how much time I spend thinking about how to do things, there'll be always like a student who kind of circumvents things and surprises me, right? So for example, no matter how much I think about preventing cheating, there'll be always like somebody who's cheating, not always, but sometimes, right? So in other words, I overestimate my ability to control what students do, right? They do things that are really unpredictable sometimes, right? So that's illusion of control. Okay, friends, so that's it. We're done with this topic, discussing cognitive biases. I hope you found it interesting, valuable. By the way, Are there any other biases that you saw in your daily life, something that you would like to share? Yeah, I've heard about it. Can you tell us what is it?
Confirmation bias, essentially, like, for example, astrology, whereas somebody will look at like their zodiac chart thing and get a daily, how their day is going to go.
Okay.
And so they look at that and they, validate it throughout the day. They see that things are going
Okay.
because they're thinking about it. For example, everybody in class can even try this by looking for like the number 21 in the next week. You'll find it every year, just as I said.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think I see what you're saying. I think we kind of touched on that during our discussion on wishful thinking, right? So there are some things we wish to believe in, and we're just looking for evidence that confirms that. So that's what you mean by confirmation bias, right? Yeah, that's how astrology works. They would tell something like, "Oh, you're very intelligent. You can lead, you're a great leader. You're a great administrator." So people think, "Yeah, I'm intelligent," and they find evidence for that, right?
Today will be an easy day.
Okay.
If you hang out with family,
Yeah. But this is not a bad thing, right? It's good to have like a positive bias sometimes too.
Somebody to reinforce.
Yeah. And overall, I think life would be boring if humans were perfect rational decision makers, right? We need to have people who are a bit crazy and irrational to keep things fun and entertaining for us, right? Just a couple of things that I also noticed, like outside of that list, there are many other biases. One thing I learned about myself is that I get a bit pessimistic towards the end of the day when I'm tired. So I try not to make any decisions towards the end of the day, right? I try not to make any conclusions because I know that I'm a bit tired and pessimistic. Is it the same for you? Do you feel a bit pessimistic towards the end of the day and optimistic during morning, or you feel like, or it's the same for you?
It kind of reminds me of like going to the grocery store while hungry.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna buy a lot
Yeah.
more food.
Yeah, that's another, but you overestimate your ability to eat things, right? So, and also, like I've noticed that in the well, actually, it's a well-known wisdom. Like, don't make decisions when you're angry, when you're tired or angry, and also don't make any promises when you're happy, because sometimes when you're happy, you want to share it with the world and things like that. But then you're like, oh, I promised this to those people. There's no way I can do it, right? Any other biases that is not listed here? That's about it. Okay, friends, unfortunately, we're running out of time. This discussion took us a bit longer, which is fine. I would like to tell you briefly what's remaining to be done this week. Number one, please introduce yourself here in this discussion thread. Some people have done it. Thank you very much for doing it. You'll get 1 bonus points if you do it properly, okay? Because I want people to get to know each other, because sometimes you don't even know how the person looks like because everybody's wearing a mask, right? So introduce yourself by January 24. That's the deadline. Number two, take or retake the syllabus quiz. So you already did it in class. If you want to get a better grade, if you want to retake it because you missed some points, then you can go ahead and do it today. So that's the deadline, right? Another thing that you need to do, assignment 1 student survey, it's due tomorrow. We were actually supposed to do it in class, but we ran out of time because we had a great discussion. I'll just tell you briefly what it is. To submit this assignment, you need to open this file and use it as a template. Insert your data here. So for you guys, if you're taking it face-to-face, it's section 01. So insert your section here. Section 01, insert your name, insert your M number, don't delete anything. Just answer all those questions here, right? So type your responses right there. So that's the kind of template we'll be using for most assignments. So read the instructions. Once you're done, submit it through Canvas, and I'll give you a grade, okay? So this is more like a survey. It doesn't require like too much thinking. But at the same time, I would appreciate if you share with me your thoughts about this course, education in general, what works for you, what doesn't work, right? So that has to be done by tomorrow. Probably you need, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes for that, okay? Now, before we leave, we still have 1 minute. Let's take attendance, because I told you that starting today, we'll take attendance to make sure that we monitor who is coming, who is not. We'll first do it for our face-to-face section, and then I'll do it for the Zoom section. Clifton? Braden?
Here.
Okay,
I'm
Clifton.
over Zoom.
Okay, that's fine. So tell us if you're in Zoom. Nathan? So I could pronounce it. Cheney Devonte? Are you in
Here.
Zoom?
In Zoom.
How
Yeah.
do you say your name? I'm sorry.
Do what?
How do you say your first name?
Devonte.
Devonte. Okay, I'll remember that. Aaron? Here.
Eh.
Jessica? Here. Hope is here. Sean? Sean is not here. Harrison is here. Tristan?
I'm in Zoom.
Sean, is it you?
Yes, yeah. My mic wasn't
Okay,
working
sorry
for a
about that.
second.
Harrison is here. Tristan is here. Violet.
I'm here.
Okay, thanks. Mason. Ahmed is here. Okay, friends, so thank you for joining us today. Don't forget about the syllabus quiz if you want to take it second time. Don't forget to introduce yourself and don't forget about assignment 1, okay? And then I'll do the same thing in my Zoom section. Well, it's tricky. I should use the screening set. Okay, Wesley.
Here.
Aaron Haney. Here, I see him. Tucker. Okay, you're here. You too. Chinese.
Here.
I'm sorry, how do you say your first name?
Denise.
Chinese. Okay, so I got it right. Thank you. Jacob. Jacob not here. Caitlin. Not here. Jason Reynolds.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Brendan. Okay, Brendan, are you here? No. Casey.
I'm here.
Casey here. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. You have the same deliverables, which is syllabus quiz, the introduction thread, and assignment 1. So thank you very much for joining us today.